What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today we need to have a good old chat about the first chapter. Now, I know recently, when we've been talking about Lorcana, we've been talking about Rise of the Floodborn, as we should. It's the new set, that makes sense. But today I want to go back and I want to look at the first chapter, because something kind of awesome has been happening in regards to the first chapter. And that is, the prices of these cards are falling very, very nicely indeed. And I, for one, am absolutely delighted. No, that doesn't mean that every single card has become super cheap. That would be ridiculous. What it does mean is that some of those ridiculous prices we've been seeing for far too long now have started to dissipate. And that is awesome. But as with all of this, we still do need to make sure that we're looking at this in context. So, if we take, like, the number one card in the set, the really big card in the set, we're looking, of course, at the Enchanted Elsa. Alright? And the Enchanted Elsa is not a very cheap card, and will not be a very cheap card. However, if we take a look at TCG Player here, that went as high as $800. The high was $802.09, apparently. It went up to an $800 card. It's now apparently a $514 card, but this is one of those situations where you need to look at the most recent solds. And actually, if we look at the most recent solds, there are two there for $470. And I'm not trying to imply for a second that $470 is cheap. It's not. It's incredibly expensive. What I am, however, telling you is that 470 is a lot less than 800. And, like, objectively speaking, definitely is. Alright? It is a lot cheaper. So, no, Enchanted Elsa is not a cheap card. And if I may be so bold as to suggest, I don't think it's ever going to be a cheap card. And I don't really think that's the point. This is the chase card from the first chapter. And it is going to remain the chase card from the first chapter. But it's gone down by nearly half. And if we look at the graph, it's quite stark, right? We're not talking about a card which is on the way up or even holding value. It is clearly dropping significantly. You know, it's dropped from $750 to 500, well, again, really 470 in the space of like 2 weeks. In the past 2 weeks, that is a gigantic drop-off. The high of $800 was a month ago. Like, literally a month ago. So that kind of tells you everything you need to know here. The Enchanted Elsa is dropping quite spectacularly, and I am loving it. And we can see the same across the board. You know, if we look at Stitch Carefree Surfer, there's a couple ways to look at this. You can look at this and go, oh, you know what, Wassy? $220, that's pretty expensive. And again, no argument from me, right? $220 is a very expensive card. Except it's not really $220, it is actually $200. Because if you look at the recent solds, there's 3 in a row, all for $200. So, and you will see this. When the prices are in the process of dropping, as they are now, you'll see this more and more, whereby it takes the graph on TCG Player a minute or two to catch up. It says 220, it's not. It's clearly 200 right now. It's just that the graph hasn't quite caught up yet. It will. Don't worry. And once again, we could look to see the peak. The peak was 265. Like a week ago, week and a half ago, it was 260. This is, again, it's quite dramatic when you look at it. It really is dropping very, very sharply. And even these enchanted cards that are keeping some value, like, honestly, now is not really the time to buy or sell. I get a lot of questions about this. And essentially, right now, we're in a weird situation. The prices are in the process of dropping. So if you want to buy these cards, now is not the right time to buy them, because they are in the process of dropping. They've not properly dropped yet. But then, by the same token, you definitely shouldn't be trying to sell these cards now, because if you wanted to sell them, you should have sold them a month ago when the price was significantly higher. We're in this weird middle ground where basically, at the moment, nobody can win. So maybe keep hold of the cards if you've got them, and wait a little while if you're looking to pick them up later on down the line. My favourite one, my real chase card from the first chapter that I've not been able to pick up yet is Belle, and this one is actually even more stark than some of the others. The high of this actually came right back in September as a $300 card. It's now down to $200, and I will say, if you look at the recent solds, these ones are at least actually quite accurate. $200 is about the price of this card right now. I'm not paying $200 for this. I feel pretty confident that we are going to see that this is going to be dropping below 200. We'll have to see if it ever gets low enough for me to actually pull the trigger on buying the card, but certainly this is one that it's definitely one that if I'm going to be picking one up, it's going to be this one. I love this one. Hopefully one day I get the chance, or maybe I buy a booster and, inside that booster, tucked away nice and happy, is a lovely Enchanted Belle. A man can dream, ladies and gentlemen. A man can dream. But I've just shown you 3 enchanted cards, right? And all across the board, they are falling very dramatically. And, when I say prices are crashing, I'm not referring to the price they're currently selling at. I'm referring to the speed of the drop. These enchanted cards across the board really are crashing. Not every card is crashing, though. Let's take something like Rapunzel gifted with healing. Now, this one, the high we've seen at about $60, and it's currently selling for, the market price says 50. The last 3 sold to 55, 54, and 47. So let's say again about 50. It's not at the peak of what it was, all right? It is lower than the peak. But I'm not going to come here and lie to you, lovely people. I'm not going to sit and pretend that this is a card which is crashing. It's not. It's doing fine. It's going down a little bit, but this is not a card that is crashing. But your explanation for this is really simple. There is no cheaper version of Rapunzel. It is a legendary card, a good card that people want for their decks, and this is the cheapest version of it. If you want to play Rapunzel, and it's a very good card, lots of people want to play Rapunzel because you can remove up to 3 damage and draw a card for each damage removed this way, potentially a draw free when you play it, and then it quests for 2 while it's on the board. Come on. That's pretty gosh darn good. So he's playing a bunch of decks. It's why it's the most expensive legendary. And because there's no cheaper version, this is going to keep the price here. The really playable cards with low pull rates, and this fits both of those, they're always going to end up a little more expensive. You can't get around it, unfortunately. You'll notice that the cold foil is significantly more expensive, and that one has dropped from 120 down to 80, which is nice. But don't expect the cold foils to go too low here, because the pull rates for the foil legendaries really are, again, very low. So you'll see them falling, but you're not going to see them going down to ridiculous levels, unfortunately. Sorry about that. Now, if we have a look at Belle again, just because, again, favourite card from the set, you'll notice this one has gone from a high of 55 down to 25. And the cold foil is still hanging on there at like 55. Although, to be fair, last one sold was 45. This one, again, downwards trend. Not quite as pronounced as the trend we see from the enchanted cards. But then again, the higher they are, the further they've got that they can fall. But once again, we see a similar kind of thing. These cards are falling. And there's always going to be a bit of an exception for the really playable cards. And Belle is a decently playable card, don't get me wrong. But across the board, you'll see them falling. But then you see some others, like, for instance, Be Prepared. Be Prepared is a very good card. It's also a rare card. And what that means is that the pull rates for something like this are significantly higher than, say, all the legendary cards we've been looking at in this video. And that's important because the price of these was never going to get that high because it's a rare and the pull rates are a little bit higher. But Be Prepared did actually get as high as about $17, $18. It's now a $5 card. It's dropped to less than a third of its value. And if you look at the recent solds, they're all around about $6. And the reason is these cards just cannot hold their value. Rare cards cannot hold their value, and the reason very simply is the pull rates are too high. And sure, when you're in that situation where booster boxes are very hard to get hold of and it's selling out literally everywhere, yeah, you will see the price holding on a little bit. But we know that reprints have come. We know that more reprints are coming, and what's going to happen over time, and honestly not that much time, is that cards, especially rare cards, as opposed to legendary or enchanted or things like that, they are going to really plummet in value, because the reality of the situation is, as more and more packs and boxes get open, a lot of these rare cards are going to go out. Way more than foil, legendaries, and enchanted and stuff like that. So yeah, there was a time when the set was scarce enough that you could really, well, annoyingly profit off of things like just ordinary rare cards. They're playable, you need 4 in your deck, you have to go and buy them. We are getting to the point now where there are so many of all of these cards out there that things like rare cards, they just cannot hold their value. So the good news is the prices are crashing nicely. Enchanted cards and foil legendaries are still holding some value, but a lot less than they were. And especially things like rare cards, they are going to crash and it's going to be lovely. Right, there we go, ladies and gentlemen. That's what you need to know. And now it's over to you guys. Tell me which cards you want from the first chapter. Tell me which ones you've picked up. Tell me anything you want to tell me in the comment section. Go nuts! Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at Lawasi. That's where we talk Lorcana and a bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCGradio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all kinds of fun things. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching Wassy Plays.